All right, welcome to the last part of the front-end deployment series or front-end web development series. Specifically with this one, we're going to be going over deployment and cloning the repository. This will likely be attached to the backend deployment and will kind of serve to teach you guys how to deploy the sites that you build to your own URL. We're going to be working with GitHub Pages with this one, which is a really nice integrated platform with your GitHub account. So that way we have as little dependencies as needed, and we kind of have the whole process set out for you. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go and copy this URL link, and we're going to clone the repository that's on the HackUCI branch. This will be given to you at the beginning of the hackathon or before with the video series. Then we're going to do git clone right here, and we'll clone it all into this directory called ZotHacks 2020 frontend, and you can also name it anything that you want afterwards. So we'll hop into the repository, and we'll notice that we have all the files right here. And if we do yarn start or yarn install, then we'll download all the local packages, and we'll try to get a local instance running. So we can give it just a second to install and build all of the packages. And what this is eventually going to reach is we're eventually going to hit a point where you'll be able to go and access your GitHub username and then .github.io and then the name of the repository that you're going to be creating locally. So right now we have the initial build process set up, and we're going to go and start our local instance. And once this gets loading, we should see it load from the backend API that's up. So we can go and close this information right here and kind of get into the steps of deployment. So the first thing is we need to make sure that we have a local repository that is a copy of the HackUCI one, which means we're going to need to go and create our own repo and push all the files that we've downloaded here to that repository, and then use that as our main repository for all of the information that we're creating. So right now I'm going to hop over to my repositories list, and then we can go and create one. Let's just call this ZotHacks site or something, or ZotHacks frontend. And we'll see that this is an available repository name. We'll make it public, and then let's not add any files, because we're going to be pretty much taking everything that we have existing in the project right here, and we're just going to be pushing it into the local instance, or like the new instance that we're creating. So we'll go and create our ZotHacks frontend repo. This repo name can be anything that you want, but it's going to eventually be the URL where it's like your name.github.io/ZotHacks frontend, or whatever you want to add. So we'll go and copy this repository, and the first thing that we need to do is git, or just rm-rf.git. What this does is it deletes the local instance for our repository of the Git folder, and this means that we're no longer going to be connected to the HackUCI version. Then what we can do is we can do git init, initialize the empty repository in here, which pretty much means we're making a new one, and then we can do git remote add origin, and then put in the new URL. And we'll see that it tracks it, and now our new origin is going to be pushing to this repository that you just created. So what we can do is we can go and do git add, git commit -m, and do a nice commit message like first commit, and we'll see that it goes and adds all of this information. You'll notice here that it hasn't really appeared, and that's because we haven't pushed it to the repository. So what we can do is we can do git push, and you'll likely see an error that says git push set upstream origin master. We're going to copy that and use that one instead, because right now this repository doesn't know that the branch master exists. So we need to go and force push this new branch and set there to be a new branch on the repository for this to work. So we can just copy that, and then it'll go and push, write all the deltas, and give us a nice little message that says it's set up to track the remote branch master from origin. And origin is kind of a word to reference the Git repository all the way over here. So if we refresh this side, we'll see that we have all the information, and it should look like an exact clone of the HackUCI repo, only now it's on your local instance. So after this, we can get into the steps of deployment, which is pretty easy. So what we're going to do is first we're going to go and copy the repository name that you used. And because the link that we're going to be hosting under is slash name of the repository, we need to go and change the base name in the application to reference this fact. So what we can do is we can go base name and then just add the name of the repository here, because we want to make sure that all of the URLs are prepended with the ZotHacks front end. Really quick, I'm going to go and make sure, okay, this should not be here. Don't worry about this section. This is just like a thing that will be fixed for the repository that you guys have. So then we'll go in here and we'll have a few commands that we're going to write. And you know, a lot of these things will be prepared for you when you actually download the repository. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to copy this URL right here, and we'll go and create a homepage attribute. And the homepage is going to be the repository that you push up to, or like the URL that we're going to be deploying to. So for me, I'm going to do lassenordahl.github.io, and then I'm going to do ZotHacks frontend. So ZotHacks frontend is now installed right here. And one thing really quickly, I'm going to go and find the actual commands that we need to paste in. These things will be all prepared for you when you download the repository, but we'll go and paste these new commands here. And what these are they are new scripts that will go and build the project for deployment and then serve it to the GitHub Pages branch. So specifically, the npm run deploy will go through and create a new branch, and that'll kind of handle all of the backend parts of our actual development environment. So that'll handle all of the pushing the code that has been prepared for deployment to the repository. And then there it'll handle the hosting on the GitHub pages. So what we can do now is we can go and do git status. Or here, git status. And we see that we have the changes that we've made. We can go and commit them. And just call it something like deployment, and then go and push. So now we should see if we ran the application, like with yarn start, it would load the application under the default URL ZotHacks frontend, which is exactly the result that we need for it to work under the GitHub URL, which will kind of just replace this localhost area. So we'll go and cancel this right here, and then all we need to do is do npm run deploy. We'll see that it does two things. First, it runs the build command, which goes and compiles all of the files into something that can be hosted on a website. Then it does the React scripts build, where it creates an optimized production build for GitHub pages specifically. We see this GitHub pages command down here in the bottom left corner. And once we see the publish sign, we should be able to go and take the link that we have right here. And we can go and just to double check, we'll go to the settings of our repository, and we'll see that under GitHub pages in the settings of our repository, it says the site has been ready to be published right here. And when we click this, we'll see that we have our deployed instance running running on the GitHub pages server. And that's kind of it. You know, the three main things is we have the commands right here that work with GitHub pages. We have the home page that defines that the page will be right here. If you wanted to do a custom URL as well, you could put like zothacks.com or hackuci.com, or whatever custom domain that you want to do, and just have your Google domain forward to GitHub pages. And then lastly, we just need to have a base name and define that it's going to be at the sub URL rather than just slash, because you can have multiple GitHub pages links across your GitHub account. So that's kind of it. Thank you for tuning in with all of the front-end deployment videos.
Hi everyone, so today I'm going to be showing you how to set up your own MongoDB Atlas account as well as deploying your app on Heroku. So I'm assuming that you probably have already made your MongoDB Atlas account since it was in the ZotHacks 2020 prerequisites account. as you can see here. So once you log into that, what you'll want to do is create a new project. It might prompt you to create a project right away if you have a new account, and you can name it whatever you want. We'll say ZotHacks demo. And what we'll want to do is you might add your other teammates, your hackathon teammates. Otherwise, you can just create a project. And you can add them later, I believe, anyways. So now within here, you're going to want to create or build a cluster. And you'll want to create a free cluster, a shared cluster. And you can pick AWS. It doesn't really matter too much. And then we'll want to pick Oregon because that's the closest to us. And all of these settings can be left the same. So we'll create cluster. The awesome part about MongoDB Atlas is that you can set up your own NoSQL database in the cloud for free without inputting a credit card, which is pretty hard to find, I think, nowadays. And the same with Heroku. You can deploy your application for free without including a credit card, which is pretty nice. Okay, once your cluster is finished building, which may take a couple minutes, you might have to refresh the page, you can click Connect here. And what you'll want to do is, instead of adding your current IP address, you'll want to allow access from anywhere. This will make things easier if you want your group mates or your project mates to be able to access the database as well. It makes things just a lot easier. So we'll click on that, and we'll click Add IP address. And then we'll also want to create a database user. And this is what we'll use as the username and password in our Mongo URI, which we saw in the fundamentals video. So we can name the username maybe just hacker, and then we can auto-generate a secret password. And we can click Create Database User. And then that's pretty much all we have to do for now. Or actually, let's click on Choose a Connection Method. And we'll connect your application, and we'll click on Python, and we'll click on 3.11 or later. So as I mentioned before, password would be your password that you just copy pasted in the previous. If you need to access that again, what you can do is close out of this and go to Database Access, Edit, and then Edit Password and Show, and that'll show your password here. So you'll want to make sure to copy paste that and have access to that for later. But let's go back to what I was just showing. If we go to connect your application and copy this. Now, if we go back over to our project, go into our environmental folder, we'll want to copy this and replace it with that new one we just copied. And we'll want to replace password with that value we just had, that password we just found. So once we have that, that's pretty much all you have to do with your MongoDB. Everything else is set up pretty much as you run it, and you don't have to worry about it. However, if you do want to check out what's inside, you can click Collections here. And it'll take a little bit of time to pull everything. And obviously right now it's going to be empty, but as we add on to it, things will begin to show up in the collections here. I'll just wait for it to load. So it's empty right now. But again, we'll create, once we have our project up and running, there'll be a user collection and there'll be information within it. So let me copy paste that password here. Update user. Okay, and we'll paste in that password here like that. And actually the last thing that you want to change in the string here is the database name. Well, again, we can call that whatever you want, but we'll call it ZotHacks project. We'll save the file. So now that we're pretty much completely set up with Mongo, we can actually run it locally and make sure that it's posting in the correct place. So if we open up Postman again, and we make sure that our environment is set to local, we can try getting. Let's try getting. Let's see what happens. Let's remove the breakpoints that we have set. And it's empty. Well, of course it's empty. We don't have anything in our database right now. But let's try posting something and seeing what happens. So we were able to create a user, and it has this ID. Let's go check it out within the UI end of Mongo. And so, like I said, we now have a user collection, and within that we have one entry, and that's that user that we just created here. So that's pretty much all there is to Mongo. Now, if we're going to deploy to Heroku, it's not much harder. All you'll have to do is create a Heroku account, and we'll create a new application. And we'll call it maybe ZotHacks project. Oops. Project. And you'll want to download and install the Heroku CLI. I've already done this. And once you've done that, you'll want to log in. And that'll allow you to push your application to this Heroku repo. So once you've done these two steps of downloading the CLI and logging in, you'll want to run this command down here. So let's close it from running locally. Let's open up a new terminal, and we're going to paste in this line. It should say set git remote Heroku to this. So now what we can do is git push Heroku master. And that'll push all of our code into this repository here. So as you can see, Heroku is pretty cool in that it'll automatically detect what you're pushing, and in this case it's a Python app, a Flask app, and it'll install all the dependencies that we listed in our requirements.txt, just as we had to do manually when we first opened up the project. So it looks like the app has been deployed to this URL, so we can command click to open it up. And it looks like we have something that says application error, but don't be afraid of this. What you can actually do is, using the CLI, see exactly what the error message is. So all I did was copy paste this text here, and we'll paste it into the terminal. And so it looks like it's crashing for some reason. With value or error message, you must specify a URI or set the Mongo URI Flask config variable. So you might be thinking, well, that's strange. I included the .env and I updated the values here. Why is it still not working? And so what you actually have to do with Heroku is we have to go into settings and manually add this configuration environmental variable. So we can click reveal config vars. It'll be empty. And we can add Mongo URI as the key, and we'll copy this string as the value. And we'll click add. Now what we can do is restart all dynos, and we can see what's going on in the background here. So it looks like it didn't crash this time, or at least we haven't accessed it yet though. So let's try accessing it again. Let's find that link. Or actually, I think it was, here it is. We refresh. There we go. And now we have our application deployed. You'll remember that this was the default text that appears on the default path. And we can do whatever we want with this now. We can do /user. And it'll show the one user that we had added just moments earlier. And now your front-end partner, or whoever's, if you're also working on the front end, can use this URL to make any requests that they need to the user resource.
As always, feel free to message us on the Discord, reach out to any of the contacts on the HackUCI website. Don't be a stranger. There's plenty of resources, and we'll be helping you guys more along and more hands-on when we start the actual virtual hackathon November 13th through the 15th. Thanks for listening.